She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cockcrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cockcrow, dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Cockcrow, dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day a back down, me now a come home. The naga jackass yard for fetch the load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Rexy and Rover. From the farm, them a come. Sun a go down but up the river. Some washing clothes, some folks are bathing at the water. Fisherman, they catch them a bring. From a canoe boat, man, them start offloading. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Lokonani. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Bangameri. Listen to this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. Them children glad when the weekend come.
All right. Hey, guess what? Good evening. I know you guys are surprised to see me here this evening, Sunday, but we just wanted to clear a couple of things up because we can't let the political opponents, so to speak, get away with what you call political atrocities from an economic standpoint and other standpoints. So Bharat Jagdeo, quote unquote, the vice president, some folks seem to think that he is the guy that's actually running the show. He conducted an interview today, and it was just laced with lies, a bunch of lies. And so this evening, we just want to swiftly settle that score with Jagdeo and not allow him to get away with those lies. So there are several things he spoke about: the economy. He spoke about value-added tax, which was 60%. It was burdensome when he was in office. He spoke about the Berbice River Bridge as though it's a sweetheart deal. We know that there are hundreds, billions of dollars, as a matter of fact, from NIS, your NIS monies. Lots of things that we want to talk about. And so I have two persons tonight because Jagdeo spoke about GPL as though for the 5 years that you would have witnessed or experienced very minimum amount of blackouts. And credit to the APNU AFC coalition for that. But he did look as though it was a PPP something. He spoke about, value-added tax being reduced from food items and old age pensioners, a bunch of lies. He spoke about the Amila Falls, the failed Amila Falls project. So guess what? I have with me former ministers of the APNU AFC government. Finance Minister Winston Jordan is with me tonight, and also Minister of Infrastructure, that is David Patterson. Both gentlemen are with me this evening, and just to walk you guys through a quick, and we call it a swift response to Jagdeo's lies. Good evening to you, gentlemen.
Hi, good evening, Mark. Winston.
Yeah, let me thank you both for just making yourselves available for this swift reaction to Jagdeo's lies. And let me also take the time to thank all of our viewers around Guyana and around the world listening to us right now. Let's begin with GPL. Bharat Jagdeo said, and this is directed to the Honorable Member of Parliament, David Patterson. Bharat Jagdeo said that the APNU inherited a sweetheart deal from GPL from his administration, the PPP that is, hence the reason for less blockouts and all these different things. You obviously have a different story to that. Here is your opportunity to rebound what he said. Mr. Patterson?
Thank you very much, Mark. And obviously, there's a saying that we have, you're getting high on your own supply. I think that's obviously the Jagdeo is getting high on his own supply, because when in 2015, the only project the GPL had was a project called PUUP, Power Utilities Upgrade Program. And in 2015, when we came in, that program installed. Winston can tell you, but he can tell you that it's not moving at all. It is signed, just like all the programs that they had, they were signed years ago, 3 or 4 years before 2015. I think it's 2013 or 2012. But just let me give you a little background. So the reason why they had the PUUP, they went to the IDB is exactly because of Amila Falls. They were trying to get money from the IDB to build Amila Falls. But then the IDB said, you're going to spend $1 billion on Amila Falls if you come to the Amila Falls project. But when you carry to GPL, you have line losses of 30%, which means that for every megawatt that you produce, you lose 30%. So they said, well, listen to me, what we will do, let us fix GPL's infrastructure. So they brought this program on called the Power Utility Upgrade Program. And it's supposed to be done in 3 lots, Lot A, Lot B, and various parts of the country. And it's supposed to address both the technical, which is the transmission distribution line, and the commercial, which is theft. When we came to office in 2015, nothing, absolutely nothing was done. Actually, the first thing that happened in 2015 when I went to GPL, the very first time, they've just returned a tender for meters, which is, the meters the meters you have from GPL. And they were about to award it, but fortunately, the government changed. And as soon as I went into GPL, the GPL guys came to us, the managers and those things at that time, not Dindi, all the rest of the managers, because he had already been sent home. And they came and they expressed concern that the meters that they were going to buy were inferior. And I said to them, well, why didn't you tell the previous administration, previous board that? They said they did, but they insisted on going and buy these meters. First thing I did, I said, well, let's send the meters to the agency that looks at it. We went somewhere that did the test, not the Stats Bureau, the Bureau of Standards. And I said, oh, these are the specs that you wanted, send it to the Bureau of Standards. And they send them to the Bureau of Standards. Lo and behold, the meters that they were going to go into, and we're talking millions of US dollars, the meters failed. The supplier objected. He said that we wanted an independent test. I won't call his name, but he's a very well-known supporter of the PPP. So we did an independence test, and they failed as well. Then he started questioning the specs that GPL put out. His meters, they're already in the country. The tender wasn't awarded, but they're already in the country. 2 containers, apparently, allegedly. And so that the specs that GPL put out were wrong, and his meters were in compliance with GPL specs. At that stage, I said, listen to me, look, what we'll do is retender it, the correct specs. If you are right, you get they win the contract. And of course, we retender it, and the rest is history. We worked on that program up to when we left. Winston, also highlight this. The monies that they had there was even inadequate. Winston, we had to go and get additional funds to finish what they had started. So that's the only thing there that was left with GPL. GPL was a tremendous debt. They had no vision. They did no maintenance. They were just in chaos. But the proof was always the proof is in the pie is in the eating, and everybody would know the tremendous gains that GPL made under the APNU-AFC coalition. So for him to say that he left something, he's right. He left absolute garbage in a company in chaos. And it took us quite a while to straighten it up. More so, they are benefiting from the plans that we put in place, because we recognize all the shortfalls. We went, the ISDB, Winston could probably tell you on that. I gave him a chance. We got funds from overseas. We made proposals, all along the different funding agencies to ensure that GPL is adequately funded. We bought 5 new generators, which they which are their took possession of, and they're calling it their own. GPL, if you Mark, if you can remember, every year, every 6 months, there's a submarine cable that they put in over that went from Freedom Hoop to Kingston. Every 6 months, we lost about 16 megawatts of power from Freedom Hoop branch, caused tremendous hardship because some, I won't, idiot, I can say it on your program, said, oh, let us go and put a submarine cable in the middle of the busiest shipping harbor, the busiest point of the Demerara River. That's what we inherited. And we sat down and we worked with a plan and we got it right, we fixed it, and we went forward. The mistake we probably would have made, Mark and I would readily admit it, is that we were so busy fixing the things that we were not complaining enough. So the people of the country will, because of course, I mean, Guyanese don't really like to hear bad news all the time, like the PPP does. Oh, this. We were saying, listen to me, judge us on what we've done as opposed to what we're saying, and we're not going to blame anybody else because we asked for the job. That's why we went to election. So we set about fixing all the ills that we inherited. We didn't even bother going back to the people to say, man, Jagdeo left this and Jagdeo left that. We said, listen to me, it's our right and duty to fix all these deficiencies, and that's what we did. Yep.
All right. So if you're now joining us, we have Member of Parliament and former Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. David Patterson, giving a swift response, as we say. We're not going to be long with you guys for an hour or so, just a couple of minutes to set the record straight, because we don't want Jagdeo to run away or his support base to run away thinking that what Jagdeo has said is the gospel truth. Let us bring in former Finance Minister, Mr. Winston Jordan, with us now. Jagdeo spoke about this economy that APNU AFC inherited and billions of dollars in the treasury and all these great plans. Here is your opportunity to set that record straight and let our listeners know exactly what you guys inherited.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mark, and good to listeners. I didn't listen to what Jagdeo said, so I neither conversant with it or not. I'm going to answer you quickly, but I just want to put in my 2 cents to add to what David was saying in relation to GPL. That the PUUP program, which was financed by IDB and the European Union, okay, we had 3 phases, essentially. But because the program took so long to implement, we inherited that program. By the time we got to the second stage, almost all the money had finished. So I was charged with going to find some money to complete the program. And we went to the Islamic Bank. As you know, it is under the coalition government that our the range of financial institutions for which we had interaction with was expanded. And we joined the Islamic Bank in 2016. And we were able to borrow or foreset the money from them to supplement the resources that were provided by the IDB and the European Union so that program could complete itself. In 2019, the management of the GPL came to the cabinet under the direction of the Minister Patterson. And they gave the cabinet an elaborate rundown of the program as it relates to GPL, its current state, what we can expect in the future in terms of its demand and its financing. And they also gave what were the immediate needs. And again, we went and looked for financing and were able to finance the 46.5 megawatt dual purpose sets that they are now crowing about. It is the only thing right now that GPL has going for it, the 46.5 megawatt sets. And the world and the Guyana and everybody must know those sets were acquired under the coalition government. They made a lot of song and dance about we were importing sets without building the base and so on. But David can tell you what happened there. It is as a result of COVID. Those sets were meant to come in, I think, in 2021, based on the financing schedule that we had. And that would have allowed the base to be built. But because of COVID, the company that was building the sets advised that they didn't know whether they were going to be in continued existence. So they brought forward the payments schedule to, I think, was August of
Correct.
or before, or July of 2020.
Yeah, June, July of 2020. Yeah, correct.
Find all of the financing that we had agreed to that took us into 2021. We had to find all of the money for them to continue manufacturing. And that is why the sets arrived where the base was built. It wasn't any, as we say, cock and bull story where sets lying down and now we're going to build the base. Everything was systematic and so on, but COVID put paid to the plans that we had. I didn't want to ask you about Amalia Falls, but I could tell you quickly about Amalia Falls.
Well, before you touch on Amalia Falls, listening to Jagdeo, and I deliberately listened to him because we have to stop ignoring him, because a lot of his supporters will buy into his fabrication. And so I wanted this swift response here. He created this, he gave this impression that the Amalia Falls project was the greatest and the best thing ever happened to Guyana, but the politics, the then APNU and AFC shut that idea down. Let me give you a chance to respond and let our listeners know exactly why that project failed.
I tell you what, let me answer your question on the economy. Give David a chance to say what he has to say, and I will supplement, because that is his material. And I don't want to steal his, which I can't do. But
no problem.
So come back to the economy. Listen, everybody knows, and those who want to be truthful, as indeed all the studies have shown, plus well-known economist Taron Kemraj has shown in his writings in the newspapers, in Starbuck News, that the economy had started to decelerate since 2014. All the numbers are there, it will show you. It had started to decelerate in 2014. When we arrived in 2015, so much was mass from the rest of the country. So much was mass that the figures, even though I don't want to use the word fictitious, but they masked what was happening in the country. Take sugar, for example. 1 week or less than a week after we came into power in 2015, the general manager left it and up and went back to his place in New Jersey. What did he left us with? $12 billion and a sugar sector that was literally dead. Was dead. I didn't make this up. Everybody knows that. I did not make this up. So we had to find $12 billion immediately to keep that sugar sector afloat. And throughout our 5 years, it became our Achilles heel. Achilles heel. That is what essentially it became. It bled the treasury dry, and it made us forego a number of the initiatives that we had in mind to put in place. Over $50 billion was sunk into that industry in that 5-year period. Just imagine what we could have done. Similarly, in that same 2015, rice which responded to the favorable price that it was getting in Venezuela. So much rice. Then in 2015, Venezuela pulled the plug on rice. Pulled the plug on rice. We had to find $6 billion to pay the rice farmers whose rice was rotting on the wharves and so forth. All of this took place immediately, not 2 years afterwards, 1 year afterwards. Immediately, within a month or two of the coalition government coming in. What economy? We inherited an economy that was running on fumes because it was built on sand. But we took up the mantle because, as David said, we asked to get into power, and therefore we couldn't cry baby. We set about righting the wrong. You also know, of course, that a lot that was taking place in the economy was due to drug money. This is not news. Professor Clive Thomas had said that over 50% of Guyana's economy was due to illegal activities, including drugs. And once President David Granger had moved swiftly on the drugs front, yes, like a person who has been on drugs, the economy began to show withdrawal symptoms over the next 2 years. But thereafterwards, it rebounded. In every single year of the 5-year period of the coalition government, we grew, resulting in the highest growth in 2019 of in excess of 5%. And don't listen to Jagdeo. Don't listen to Jordan. Don't listen to Jagdeo. Listen to what the international community has to say. And in every report of the international community from 2015 to 2020, not one adverse report on the economy was ever given. Not one. So don't listen to Jordan. Don't listen to Jagdeo. Go to the independent sources, and they will show you that not one adverse report on the economy of Guyana was given. In fact, in some instances, particularly in 2018 and 2019, praises were given for the management of Guyana's economy by the International Monetary Fund. You don't have to listen to Jordan or believe Jordan. Just go and Google those reports, and you will see.
All right, well said, former Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan, there setting that record straight. Let's switch back to Studio B with Mr. Patterson. This hydro project, a Myla Falls project, a failed project, billions of dollars, billions of taxpayers' monies wasted on that project, but yet Jagdeo wants to bring this back to the forefront. And he's blaming the APNU and AFC for killing that project. Your take on that, sir?
Right, Mark, I've always said something about a Myla Falls. It's a Ponzi scheme. It was a Ponzi scheme. It was then, and it still remains a Ponzi scheme. It started off with FIP Motonel. If you can remember, that they awarded a real estate agent a contract for $15.4 million to build a road to this Myla Falls. That road's supposed to be like 126 kilometers, or 185 kilometers. $15.4 million. It's a huge outcry. It's a huge outcry. How can you award a contract to a man that never even built a walkway? But the PPP went ahead. Give this guy the contract. Do you know how much that road that never finished? It never, ever, ever was completed. Do you know how much that it ended up costing the Guyanese public? $45 million. $45 million, and that's how the project started. And to a road, it's a road to nowhere. You know, I mean, I see they're advertising now to restart it again, and they have to go and build another 83 kilometers. That's what, according to the project. The request for proposal I saw this morning or so from the Prime Minister's office. So they started off with, you know, garbage in, garbage out. You started off bad. You award a contract to a real estate agent for $50 million. It ended up costing the government, the people of Guyana, $45 million. Just like Winston saying, $45 million you could have done so much with. Then they came to us and they came to the country to say that how the IDB approved this project, which is a total lie. The IDB said to them, because if we carry this project to our board, which is the IDB board for approval, it will fail. Here's what we can do for you, because of course they were good friends with the IDB and the individual personnel and so. And so the IDB said to them, well, here's what we'll do. We'll lend you some expertise, and they will go to help you try and negotiate to get this project back in economically sound. Of course, not even with the help of the IDB and all their financial experts, they could not get it. But they go around, Jagdeo them goes around saying that the IDB approved. What the IDB said is, listen to me, if we carry it to our board, you'll fail. But instead of carrying to our board, we give you 6 months. So they give them a mandate letter. If you can get the project right within the 6 months or 1 year, whatever the time is, we're willing to carry it forward. Here was the issue with the project. Every single aspect of it had challenges, the technical challenges, you know what I mean? Well, you know, half the time there's no water. They did no studies on the geographic and the geotechnical issues, whereby, you know what I mean, like Maka or like anything, you have a landslide, all of our billions of dollars will just wash away. They want the GPL even in a financial position, because when you have all this power is not like a fruit or anything. You can't store it. You have to use it. And so the contract they had was pay or take. So they're going to give this company a contract to produce 165 megawatts, but GPL couldn't even take it. Nor could GPL was in any financial position, because they're the only person to be able to pay for it. Because it was estimated that our GPL would have to pay a Myla Falls only $125 million a year. GPL can only have revenues for 100 million, so there's a shortfall of $25 million. And that's a Myla Falls, you know. A Myla Falls it doesn't even solve the whole of the country's problem issues. That power that was coming from that ill-fated project was just going to the Demerara interconnected grid, which is from Charity to Molson Creek. So the people in Baratica would not have seen a bit of it. They had no plan for them. The people in Essequibo would not have seen any electricity from it. So it was just a simple thing, you know. I mean, as I always said, I thought it was a retirement fund for certain politicians who said how when their term was up, I'm going to retire. So they had this deal whereby, I mean, whatever it is, I'm sure there's some or the other, they're probably intertwined with the company that's going to do it. So they could retire, the politicians could retire, and they would get a pension from their Myla Falls project. That's my only take why they keep pushing it. Every single aspect of it was wrong. They 45% of the cost of $1.2 billion, that was in transmission and distribution, which by they would make this hydro plant in a Myla, and then of course you have to get the power down to Georgetown. 45% of the cost of that project was to get the power down. And they were so short-sighted, they bypassed all the areas. Linden, right now we pay Bosai about $2-3 billion a year to supply Linden. They had an opportunity, I don't know why, but you, Mark, know better with the politics than me. Bypass Linden, so they weren't even given turn on a light bulb in Linden with a Myla Falls. It was a Ponzi scheme. So eventually when we came in, and Wilson could elaborate on that, to make this project feasible, it's like if you're going to buy a house, Mark, you want to buy a palace, but the bank will only lend you, and the palace costs $10, the bank will only willing to lend you $8 because your income and so is not viable. So what the government was going to do is take from our treasury monies to buy down the interest. That was it. Winston, $144 million to make it feasible. Just throw it into the bank just to make it feasible. Inconceived project. It will never work. I could dare say. I mean, we as a government made a commitment that we would transition from heavy fuel oil to renewable energies, and we have a program which they're using. We set about the program. We have to do it incrementally. We had a program whereby he said, we'll do this first, do this second, do this third. We weren't going to try to use a mile as a silver bullet. But they're only doing this for the politics. Their new baby is a gas to short project, which when we developed it, we were looking at it was going to cost less than about $500 million. It's now over $1.2 billion. So you can see they take all these projects, they double and triple it. And then, of course, when you look behind, you remove the veil, you see the actors in the retirement fund. So therefore, you know what I mean? They have a company that gets a part of the project, and that company from now until they expire, pay them a cent a kilowatt or something like that. But that's it. The project, the Myla Falls project was an ill-fated project from the very first instant, from the award of the road to trying to get persons to approve it. Then they're going to try to foster that onto the country by raising our debt ceiling, which they've done now because they have the majority. But when they try to do it, they don't have the majority in Parliament. So, I mean, all they're going to do is get themselves rich on this project, and the Guyanese taxpayer, just like the Marriott, the Guyanese taxpayers will have to foot the bill.
Mark?
Exactly, a Ponzi scheme. Mr. Jordan, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Mark, you know, when I listen to David, and our public needs to know, because I see the PPP, even those who either they expelled or who left the party and so on, jumping on the bandwagon again, and one of them talking about Amalio and so forth without even understanding the intricacies and so on involved. Mark, let me tell you something. When the president in 2015 went to the UN General Assembly, among the people he met was the president of the Inter-American Development Bank. And the gist of what was said was that they were happy in the direction we were going in not continuing with the Amalio Falls project. That's just the gist I will tell you. Don't let them fool you. The president can tell you next time you ask him. He may not want to tell you the full discussion he had with the president of the, but I'm telling you the gist of that was that the bank was happy that we were no longer proceeding with the Amalia Falls. I met with one Jerry Johnson, who was the general manager of the Inter-American Development Bank. I met with him at least 5 times in the early 2015 period. And again, the gist of what was told to me in that conversation, and a letter to that effect was issued to me, suggested that the bank was happy with our not proceeding with the project. In fact, he was careful to say there was no project.
Correct.
He said there was no project. What the bank was involved in was some helping the government with environmental and other studies and helping them to see if they will find financing. There were 2 or 3 sources of financing for this project: China Exim Bank and China Development Bank. None of those they were able to conclude a deal with. None. They were not able to conclude a deal. And the contractor who was identified for this project, Norway expressed displeasure. And their 80 million that they were about to put in that project was in jeopardy. So we could not use that contractor. This was a project that was mired in all kinds of difficulties. The government claimed that not 1 cent of debt would have been contracted. But the IDB in this financing scheme was supposed to put roughly 140 million US. The IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, they have a private sector arm. But the IDB was meant to put 140 million roughly in this project. IDB don't put money in project without a sovereign guarantee. They don't put money in private project without a sovereign guarantee. And that meant debt. The debt profile would have gone up. The contractor who was building that project, and I'm going to come to you and show you what is going to happen. He wanted a guarantee for that GPL would purchase the power as per contract, regardless whether I think they could supply or force majeure or rain or whatever the case may be. And to ensure that he got paid, the government was proposed to enter contract with him that would have seen our reserves being garnished. I believe for the first time in our history. Garnish means set aside. Garnish here just means set aside, just in case GPL could not meet the payments as per contract.
So because I'm seeing some comments, people want to know who that contractor is. That contractor was looking for a gift, right?
Chinese contractor.
He was looking for a gift, a big gift.
Chinese contractor.
Oh, Chinese? Oh, wow.
Yes,
continue, sir. Yeah.
He wanted to make certain that he got his money. And the way as I remember it, how it was written up, everything was in his favor. But to make certain that he got his money, our reserves, part of our reserves would have had to be garnished to make certain that the money was there whenever payments came up and GPL could not make the payments.
All right, let's stick a pin with Mr. Jordan for now. For those of you who are now joining us, as the scroll is saying there, this is a swift response to Jagdeo and his many lies. He spoke about Jagdeo, spoke about not so long ago in an interview with his good friend Neil Marks, spoke about the good things, so-called good things. And one of them he mentioned was the Berbice River Bridge. I know I want Mr. Jordan, who was the finance minister, to touch on that and almost the bankruptcy of NIS. But let us go to Mr. Patterson about this Berbice River Bridge that Jagdeo is peddling as a good deal under his regime.
Right, Mark. So everybody, well, the Berbice River Bridge, I don't know how he can have the gall to even consider that or even mention in the barefacedness to call that a good deal. Look, when the Berbice Bridge came about, there was the very first issue was, and if you go up to Berbice right now, the very first issue was it was in the wrong location. That was when they started it, out of nowhere. There's no study, no feasibility study, no report whatsoever why you put a bridge in the mouth of the Berbice River. Conventional wisdom, the studies before said it out should go by Ithaca, Everton, Mara area, which is the shortest route. But of course, those areas, are not very, the PPP, of course, they never enjoyed very good support in those areas. So maybe that may be one of the reasons. So then they brought in they said, all right, fair enough. They had the majority when they started in 2008, 2007, and they said they will do a public-private partnership. And the same thing that they do in Jamila, they went about shouting that how they would cost the Guyanese people no sort of money. But in the background, here's what they did. They went around to government agencies and forced them to invest in this this bridge, a floating bridge in the 21st century. So so they built it. They went around. They got a few persons, a few financial institutions who came up. The financial institution put in quarter of the money, if that much, but they had the lean to get out their sets first. So the government agencies, NS, and those things like that were at the bottom of the ladder. They put in the bulk of the money, yet they're at the bottom of the ladder. Meaning preferential shares and those things that Winston could explain to you. Our problem was this. So, but it's a public-private partnership. They opened it. From the day the Berbice Bridge opened to the public, everyone started complaining about the cost. It cost, at the time when we came in 2015, was $100 Ghana to cross the Demerara Harbor Bridge. When we took in office, the cost for a car, that's for a car. When we took office, it was $2,200 to cross the Berbice Bridge. Shorter distance, they set out that they to make the project, and we'll tell you. So what they're good at, to make a project look good, like if you're selling an old car, you go, you put a big fancy spray on it and you bluff it up and you spray it and you got some nice bright color. So that's what they did. They made some projections that long as we make this, when we build this bridge, 400,000 people will start passing this bridge, so therefore we carry down the cost. And usually that's like doing a Mile of Falls and those things like that. Those projections were unrealistic, never ever practical, and that's what happened. So therefore, obviously, nobody could. That's a normal Barbicians use it once whenever they need to use it because of the cost. So the cost never came down. So, but as a campaign promise, we said that we will look at this bridge. So immediately in 2015, we took over. I think Winston, and you remember that Winston's ministry, I think he signed a letter, wrote to the Berbice Bridge saying to them, listen to me, new government, we're not troubling anything. We would like to subsidize the passage of cars, reduce the cost. The government again will think. And you know what, Mark? This fancy bridge, they refused. They refused, saying that they're a private company, and government should not get involved, even though NIS have the bulk of the money and those things like that. And they refused to even meet us, speak to us, and those things like that. What we did is immediately we put on some water taxis, because of course what happened as well, they passed an act called the Berbice River Bridge Act, which made it illegal for any other means other than the Berbice Bridge for you to cross any vehicles or those things like that. So by law, the only avenue a Berbician can cross the Berbice River with a car, a vessel, or any other than individuals is the Berbice Bridge. So, and of course, when they did that, the New Amsterdam and Rosenau Stelling became dilapidated and those things like that. So we brought in river taxi service, free of cost to school children, to nurses, to teachers, certain pensioners and those things like that. So therefore, the river taxi free of cost would carry the students, because those were the persons who were suffering. And all the students from Region 5 couldn't get to the Berbice High School over Region 9. The nurses, the teachers caused them a tremendous amount. And we brought that in and we introduced that. And that was tremendously effective. Persons loved it. And when the Berbice River Bridge saw what we did, then is when they ran back to Winston and said, yes, let's talk. Because remember, that was late in 2015 when they finally agreed that they could speak. So anyway, in the contract for the Burbage Bridge is private entity that they have. They were responsible for maintenance of the bridge as well. They said they collect the money and those things like that. And I was saying, Mark, since 2009, since those pontoons that went into the Burbage Bridge, they've never ever been serviced. It's the salinity in the soil, the salt in the water, eats at the steel and those things. For the Demerara Bridge, we have to take out a pontoon every 3 years. So there are pontoons in there that have been there for the longest while, 14 years, and they've never ever been serviced. And that was a concern to us as a government. So once again, we went to them to say, listen to me, you're a private company. Here's what we are concerned that you can't and we're unwilling to maintain the bridge, because the money they're getting, they're taking and paying back their shareholders. NIS then
a quick question, Mr. Patterson, and thank you so much for breaking that down. Thank you also for reminding the listeners that that bridge at the mouth of the Purvis River is almost triple the distance if it would have been placed through Ithaca over to I believe somewhere in New Amsterdam there. But they didn't
right below Stanley Tongue area. Yeah.
Exactly. And the investors, these private investors, we're going to have Mr. Jordan touch on the investment from NIS. How many private investors, and do you care to name those investors, please?
They are, I can't recall, but I know there's all of them. I know there's Hand in Hand Trust. I think there was Demerara Bank. Speaking about, there was Demerara Bank, DDL, and that was another good story, because DDL came to us immediately and said, we want to sell our shares.
And they did.
They did, but the board initially refused to allow them to sell the shares.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So we were able. So this, I mean, when Jagdeo speaks, you know, so we should really we really should have a forum where we could tell him what happened. But let me finish before Winston goes on to that.
Sure. Right.
So anyway, so the Burbage Bridge and the Burbage Bridge Company now came to us and said they're losing money. And we said, well, impossible. If you look at the deal that you signed, if you look at the contract you signed, you can't be losing money. What you have to go and do is show us and tell us why you're losing money. But of course, they don't want to go and tell them the other day that them and the PPP did what it is. So they came to us, the contract, they have permission to use the bridge for 21 years. Already we finished 14. So they barely had about 7 or 8, they barely have 6 or 7 years left with the bridge. So the first thing they came to us is that they're losing money, and what we should do is extend the life of their contract by another 10 years. So therefore they could control the Burbage Bridge for another 17 years. We said, no, impossible. You made a deal, you signed on dotted line. The people are paying $2,200. We're not interested in that. So in an effort to force the hands of the government, they made a pronunciation that on November the 5th, I could remember that day, 2018, that they're going to raise the tolls. Everybody will know that from $1,900 per car to $8,400 per car, effective that day. As you know, I had to, through the Attorney General's office, issue the order to take over the bridge and management of the bridge. And I said, I'm only taking over the management of the bridge to ensure that you don't raise the tolls. I'm not taking over anything else. It's interesting, Winston, you note how, despite what Jagdeo saying, how good a project is, they still haven't moved that order.
Exactly.
Or they're still there. They're scared of their own people.
I was going to say that.
They're scared of their own people. So the order that keeps them from the Burbage Bridge from imposing that tremendous hardship on the Burbician, we did. They criticized it and said, oh, we're anti whatever it is and those things like that, but we acted in the best faith of the citizens. It's still there. It's a year into their office. They haven't even addressed it because they know their friends and family thing. You can't now go and take the order now because you have a big war. So they're using the actions that we have keeping their own people at bay. They're scared of their own friends.
And you know too, Mr. Patterson and Mr. Jordan, that when the Berbice Bridge was opened, the price for a F-150 or a truck, it was 17,000, 20-something thousand. Cars were almost 6,000 and 7,000. I remember that because I took my vehicle and blocked that bridge for 3 hours and got about 4 or 5 charges, right? So Jagdeo can't talk about, you know, benefits to Guyanese people in that bridge. But let us bring the former finance minister on in terms of the billions of dollars taken from NIS and so forth. Talk about that, sir.
Mark, what I mean, it's such a sad situation. You see the present minister of finance running around the country like a traveling salesman, trying to say that he cares and he's looking after these problems that NIS have. These aren't policy problems, you know. These are administrative problems. A busy minister of finance running around the country, he says that he can solve somebody who's not getting the pension and so forth. I guess it's probably good optics, but it's really a waste of thing. And it's also a minister doing the work of an administrative officer or so on. You know, conflicting roles, because they use NIS as a cash cow. A cash cow. Let your viewers know. NIS was used as a cash cow. NIS money was used to finance certain private sector people. Instead of those private sector people going to a bank, they went to NIS. And they were allowed to borrow from NIS as if NIS were a bank. And the chairman and whoever were bludgeoned to hold meeting to lend money to the bridge. And NBS, as you well know, when the man refused to go down, you know what happened to the poor man. Died, one of them died already, and one is still looking to get his money and so forth. What happened there? But I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers, and I don't know if David has it. But the model that David talked about in terms of fare increases, I'm sorry we don't have it in front of us. But the fare today, if the model that they had with the fares increasing every year, every other year, and so on. Today, nobody would have been able to cross the Berbice Bridge if they were able to implement those fares. And in that 2014, coming up to 2015 election, when an increase, a big jump was to be made in the fares, they did not do it. They did not do it. They wait until the coalition come in and try to put pressure on the coalition to say, well, we must honor contract. We must honor the contract to let them increase the fares, even though we had a commitment in our manifesto to reduce fares. To reduce fares. I'm sorry we don't have it, because today, a car crossing that Berbice Bridge might very well have been paying $20,000 to cross. Just a car.
I have it, and I look for it and post it up, because I have a copy of it. I mean, it's one of those things that you're any economic student, you know, when you go to UG and you say, well, come up with a plan, and they just put some numbers in, make some projections, do a line graph, and then say, oh yeah, that will work.
So,
you know, and that's go ahead, you gentlemen speak. That's why you're here. Speak, Mr. Jordan.
NIS is not broke, but technically they are broke because they are eating into their capital to pay benefits and expenses. So they are broke. But I'm saying not broke because the coalition government came to the rescue of NIS where they could have rescued them. It is the coalition government that replaced the monies that NIS lost through the Clico debacle.
Yep.
$5-point-something billion. And the scammers got off scot-free. But today,
you know, the fact is, and you're painting that picture to remind our listeners that the coalition saved NIS, the coalition saved Gaisuco, the Guyanese Sugar Corporation, because the then general manager, Mr. Raj Singh, left it in a hole of $12 billion+. The coalition also saved GPL. That is why they had minimum amount of blockouts under the coalition. Those are facts, and Jagdeo cannot run away with that. His supporters cannot run away with that. Mr. Jordan, as the former finance minister, let's touch on the economy. Let's touch on what Jagdeo is talking about VAT. You were there. The coalition reduced that 16% VAT, that burdensome VAT that Jagdeo and the PPP introduced to the people of Guyana. You guys were able to reduce it to 14%. And the increase of pensioners and all these different things. I heard Jagdeo talking about pension increase and how much they're going to do for pensioners and young people now. Take a shot at that.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, because, you know, sometimes, like I said, sometimes we have short memories. Look, we know, for example, that when it comes to the tax system in this country prior to 2015, it was written up all over the place. Only some people were paying taxes. Tax evasion was rampant. Tax concession was given galore, and so forth. Those who could have appeared at Freedom House or in some dark room with somebody else and get the tax success. It was discriminatory. I mean, private sector themselves complained that they were members of private sector commission and so on, and they weren't getting some of the concession that they saw their colleagues getting, because their colleagues were able to negotiate tax concessions for themselves and not for the commission. All of that we came in, and I had an earful when I came in. I had an earful. Several private sector people approached me and said, Minister, you got to do what you have to do. You ain't gonna make friends. And I tell you, quite frankly, I told everybody, I came to do a job. I didn't come to a beauty contest. I went to the first Private Sector Commission dinner, I think it was, or the GCCI dinner, and I made it very clear. Very clear. No one, no individual can come to my office and beg for a concession. If a concession must be given, it must be given to everybody. It must be given to the sector and so forth. Of course, I didn't make a couple friends. I would never have made any friends no matter what I gave anyhow, because there were a clique in the Private Sector Commission who were opposed to the coalition government from day one. It is as if we were interlopers and they weren't going to make us look good. But having said that, I said that as a background to let you know that I move and the coalition government moves swiftly to broaden the tax base. My friend, if you are not paying taxes and now you have to pay, are you going to be a friend of the government? You're not going to be a friend of the government. When we gave amnesty, I keep making this point, when we gave amnesty, 9 months only, not a whole year, amnesty, we were able to collect $12 billion as a result of the amnesty from those who weren't paying taxes or who were shortchanging taxes and so on. Of that 12 billion, 9 billion came from the gold sector. You hear how we increase taxes and so on. We increase taxes by broadening the tax base and by going after those who were not paying taxes. Check our portfolio, you will see. We reduce VAT from 16% to 14%. We remove a whole set of people as a result of increasing the exemption for VAT from 10 million to 15 million. A whole set of people right away get swiped off of the roll, so that we could concentrate on the big fishes. We reduced the corporation tax from 30% to 25%. Many said we could not do it, and we did it in the 5 years. We reduced income tax to the individual from 30% to 27.5%. We increased tax threshold. We removed income tax from NIS contribution. Those are only some of the over 150 plus measures that we had put in place to bring relief to all sectors. All sectors. We didn't bring in relief to one individual or two individuals. And because of that and broadening of the tax base, we were able to use that income and redistribute it. That is why you have the highest salary increase paid in that 5 years, over 77%. We didn't go out and borrow the money willy-nilly. We got it through by broadening the tax base, increasing pensions, massive increases in the education. The education sector became the biggest sector, over 50 billion by the time we left government. the largest sector, 50 plus billion, free meals, free transportation, free uniforms, and so forth, free textbooks. All of those were given. And then they talk about, imagine security, or when we put security in schools, they're talking how security gone up. That's what they said. Security gone up. And they try to blame it that how ministers getting security. But we put security in school. Teachers need security, children need security. And all of that was being able to do. Now you check and you see, I'm going to quickly give you a starting statistic. The accumulated deficit on the budget of the coalition for the 5 years that we were in power was $92 billion accumulated deficit. The deficit of the 2020 budget brought out by one Agile was $90 billion on the 2020 budget. $90 billion. The deficit on the 2021 budget was $120 billion. And they went back to the parliament for supplementary of nearly 30 billion more. So that's 150 billion plus 90 billion. That's $240 billion in 2 years compared to $92 billion accumulated over 5 years of the coalition government. Who is wasting this country's money? And who is borrowing this country into massive debt? Who is pawning the resources of this country? And who is utilizing the resources in Natural Resource Fund without activating the Natural Resource Fund? Read Taran Kemraj today's Stabrook News. Read his article in today's Stabrook News, and you will see.
Good. Lots of points, and this is I'm reading some of the comments from our viewers, listeners on the ground as well, and let me just say good evening to all of them. Yasmin Henry, Otto Martin from the Small Man Show, and lots of other folks who are watching. Before we get back to Mr. Patterson, and I know I promised you guys just a couple of minutes, but this is so important for our listeners. They want to hear. Mr. Jordan, the sugar industry, we know it was ailing. We know that when Raj Singh, the head of Gaisuco, the chairman of the board, left, he left Gaisuco in a hole of $12 billion. We know of that white elephant, the 200 million, I believe it was, spent on the Skeldon estate. We know of the downsizing of the sugar industry. We know of the shutting down of sugar estates under the PPP. Why do you suppose people get this perception, and PPP supporters, that is, that it is the coalition that shut down the sugar industry? Explain that, please.
Mark, you have to put it down to clever marketing on the part of the PPP. And the corollary to that will be poor marketing by the coalition government. I think that is as flat and as stark as I could. Because in the first place, when you look at the history of decline of the sugar industry, it didn't start with the coalition government. Everybody knows that Jagdeo closed estates. Everybody knows that. But no song and dance is made of the fact that he closed estates. No song and dance is made, and I think it's Kemraj who had to carry the then government to court to get some funding benefits that were due to the sugar workers. Nobody says anything about that. And Mark, you're making a mistake of keep saying $12 billion in the hole. When we came into power, Gaisuco was broke. There were $90 billion in the hole.
Wait a minute. When the APNU AFC, and I want all of the listeners, including PPP supporters, to hear this. When the APNU AFC got into office, what Gaisuco was what?
90 what? $90 billion, not 12. 90 billion. They required
12 was just to cover the expenses and keep it going.
2015.
2015.
Wow.
We had to give them another 11 billion in 2016, 9 billion more in 2017, 6 billion more in 2018, and it continued. And people giving the impression that if the government, look, all of the non-essential parts of Gaisuco were hived off. whether it be the training school, whether it be the health center, whether it be the education, drainage and irrigation, all those were hived off from Gaisuko and put in the government structure. So it is the government who took over the expenditure for those. And still, Gaisuko remain unprofitable and every year increasingly in trouble. And let us be very clear, even our own people I heard saying that how, well, don't say old people, people like Jeffrey and so on, I see saying how we dismissed 7,000 workers. 4,850 something workers were severed from the estates. And they were all paid their severance pay plus interest. Plus interest. And contrary to what out there, a number of them praise the coalition government. Praise the coalition government for the training and so on that we put in place, for the advice in terms of them utilizing their severance money and so forth. Yes, they did. But like I said, clever marketing by the PPP, you have to give them that. Clever marketing. And as a number of...
I do hope the coalition, the PR of the coalition get its act together, but we're not here to touch on that. Let's get back to, before we wrap up this evening, special program. Mr. Patterson, the other thing that this guy boasts and bragged about, Jagdeo that is the something that has hope, the word hope, but didn't offer much hope. That is the Hope Canal. He spoke about it, reduced flooding in Region 4 and flood in Region 5 and so forth. And his supporters may not understand that there was an error. There were folks, engineers who actually advised against that. Let us have you touch on that. I've noticed Mr. Jordan is smiling, but let us get to Mr. Patterson first.
Look, listen to me. I could say this here on air, and I hope you recorded that the PPP has never ever did any project that benefited anyone other than themselves. The Hope Canal is just another one of those issues there. Billions of dollars and they spend there down the drain. They build a bridge that you can't cross up to now. You know, there's a bridge that is sinking. I could recall when I went there. The cabinet asked me to look at the bridge, and I carried my engineers out there. We got an engineer, we got a firm out of Trinidad, and they said, "Minister, you can't do anything with this bridge until it stops sinking." So we actually put monitors on it. Up to now, they're there. If anybody goes on the bridge, you see some weights and some monitors. It haven't stopped sinking every year. You know what I mean? The Hope Canal is just one of those one of those issues that they bring that they could have spent, that they could have hived off billions and billions of dollars to do that. Now, look, Jagdeo, when you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, you're looking for a successful project. You know what I mean? Marriott, I hope he didn't mention Marriott, because someone will tell you that that's a failure. Skeldon is a failure. The Hope Canal, the Burbis Bridge, you name it. I mean, the wharves in Charity, you name it. The airport, we inherited a project which they signed 3 or 4 years ago, 2 or 3 days before Jagdeo demitted office. Signed a contract for $138 million US. No, there's no plans, there's no designs, there's no geotechnical stuff. I mean, I saw there was a reasonable article one day that said it. By the time we got there, they decided to put, that's what they do. They said they're going to extend the runway, and they didn't even look down at the bottom of the runway to see that they're going to extend it in the middle of a creek. You know, but you know what I mean? Of course, they're burst and bluster. They're spending another, about $8 billion on it now, trying to get it right, because of, obviously that is shame. We did what it is. We said, listen, let's get the runway fixed. So the biggest planes could land. You could always look at the terminal buildings and those things afterwards. That's what we did within the money, because Winston can tell you for that day, we set out no more money. We've already sunk so many $1 million into it already. Not a cent more. Let us do the best that we can, and that's what we did. When we came in, I mean, if we talk about when we came in, they were going to move the people from Tamari North. I see they've gone back to that again. move the people so they could build hotels and those things like that. People have been there for 30, 40 years. We sorted out all of that. We entered into agreement with the communities to sort it out so they could cohabitate. Who had to move, we moved and give them a house and land somewhere else. They're now trying to move it because, of course, their friends and family they like casinos, they like hotels and those things like that. You know what I mean? Because those are like washing machines. You want to pay $1 million?
They're like washing machine, Mr. Jordan. When I mentioned the Hope Canal, you kind of chuckled. Is there any reason? Explain.
Yeah,
Let's hear.
I chuckled because it's another one of those many projects that are extolled. They give the impression that Jagdeo is this wizard. He always put his hand on some project and so on. But every project that he put his hand on cost this country billions of dollars. Skeldon Estate, I heard you mention it just now, $200 million. Let me tell you something. The $200 million US, every penny is being paid by taxpayers, being paid back by not Gaisuko. Can you imagine if the money we are expending on repaying debt for Skeldon Estate, if that had been done by Gaisuko itself, can you imagine what the coalition would have been able to do in its term in office? But the taxpayers have been saddled with that repayment for Skeldon Estate. Marriott Hotel, 19-point-something million US from Republic Bank. Marriott could not pay. The bank was about to seize the hotel. The government had to come in and take over the loan.
Wait a minute. This is the very hotel that Jagdeo said tonight that glorifying the Marriott Hotel. The bank was about to.
The bank was about to seize the hotel.
Couldn't pay their loans.
Couldn't pay the loan when it became due. And they rushed to the government and said, well, government is your property. What are you going to do? And we took over the loan and renegotiated the loan. That loan was somewhere in the region of nearly 8-point-something, nearly 9%. And we negotiated that loan down, I think it was 6 or 5 or something percent, and linking the prepayment period. I see my erstwhile friend, the Minister of Finance, was talking something couple of weeks ago, and I had to put him to his place where this is concerned, saying, but we took expensive bond. When the bond was taking $30 billion at 4-point-something percent. But the same bond for the Republic Bank loan was taken at nearly 9%.
One of the other wasteful project by Jagdeo is the fiber optic cable.
Don't talk about that.
But Mark, let me quickly, don't forget this point I want to make to you.
Sure.
Reincarnation of the Malya Falls, they're now telling you that it's some boot, build, own, operate, and transfer, or something like that. I hope and I think the Demerara Bridge, they're now claiming now is a boot or a butt. BOT, build, own, transfer, build, operate, transfer. Look, let me tell you something, man. The history of public-private partnership in this country is bad. The government is always left whole in the stick. And I'm telling you this now. There is nobody out there who is going to take on Amalia Falls with this risk and everything else, unless it's another sweetheart deal. The Guyanese populace don't know what they are getting into because of what is going on right now. This government is getting away with murder. But the Guyanese don't know what they get. There is nobody who will take on Amalia Falls unless it's so sweet. It's so
honey
that they are willing to take more than diabetes. The BOT for the Demerara, they're gone out there telling you about how they can get somebody to build it. These people don't even know how the rivers run. They don't know the riverbed, nothing at all. These people bidding blindly.
And we have to pay for the risk.
From one place to the next place without any feasibility study to the new place. That is what we are in. And the same Jagdeo talked about in 2017. That the coalition government was spawning Guyana and they were implementing projects without feasibility studies. They moved the project from Houston to this new area. No feasibility study about the area has been done. Nothing about the riverbed. Nothing about the wave movements. Nothing. But they gone out there saying, but they want people to build bridge, and they must build this bridge in 2 years. Well, I would love to see it. The only problem is all of us are going to cry.
Indeed, looking at the time, Mr.
And up here with a low battery. So if you see I disappeared.
Okay, good. We'll wrap up now. Mr. Patterson, GPL every day, 2, 3, 4, 5 cases of blackouts, businesses complaining, citizens complaining. In your closing remarks, how does that make you feel, especially under your tenure? We hardly had blackouts in Guyana.
As I said, Mark, you know me, don't miss the water till the well run dry. And I think that's we're going through the case today, right here now, you know me. When they came in, the first thing they did, if Winston could remember, is make great sweeping statements about stewardship of the GPL and other industries. And I said, as I said then, and I wrote in the papers that we're in for some dark times. They said no. Now every other morning, the whole country, and that's one of the things we worked hard on, and we worked hard on as a government, to ensure that if there's a fault, it doesn't bring down the whole country. Every other, almost weekly, the entire country is plagued into blackout, and they give you some stupid, frivolous excuse. But I know the staff, David,
Mr. Patterson, one quick second. Sorry that I have to interject. I know Mr. Jordan said that his battery is going. Let's give him a chance for his closing remarks quickly.
Yes, Mark. All I'm going to say is that there's a lot there to talk about, and I hope we can do a whole series if it allows you on your program, that you can bring various of us former ministers and so on to talk. I am prepared to come as long as I got the time, anytime you want me to talk more about this here, and bring the real facts. In fact, if you're going to listen to Jagdeo, let us cut up what he said and let us rebut everything that he is being able to say. I know those facts are almost on the off the top of my head.
Same here. That's a good idea.
I don't have a piece of paper in front of me. You call me a thing, and I didn't have to go reading anything. These are facts that I have here in my head right there, and I'm prepared to put them out anytime, any place, anyhow.
But you know, you guys have chewed him up tonight in terms of the lies that he was spewing there. Thank you so much, Mr. Jordan. At this short
to talk about.
I will be in touch with you. Thank you,
Mark. I wanna, before Winston go, I wanna take him up on that. If you can dissect his speech into segments and whatever he says, then we can sit down and invite us, and you play that speech, and we can tell you the facts.
Sure.
You can play this.
Continue with your closing remarks. I didn't want us to lose Mr. Jordan, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like Winston, you know, I mean, you called me on just because there were some comments made by Jagdeo, which are all untrue. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that our power sector had no plan. There was no plan. There's absolutely no plan. And I keep saying to people that this government here is just working on remote control. All they're doing is implementing the things that we have started, the plans, the foundation we've laid, and doing a lot of light shows and talk shows and, as you say, so PR stunts. There was no plan. When we came in, when we took over GPL, they just tried finishing Reading Hoop, Mark. Reading Hoop, and they opened Reading Hoop, which is a power station out there. Reading Hoop, we had to pay $10 million Guyana dollars every week because there was no way to get it. We had to truck fuel from Guy Oil over the bridge. 10 million Guyana dollars. I mean, like 40 million Guyana dollars every month to keep Reading Hoop running. That was how bad we were. I mean, we got past that. We built it. We implemented systems. We went internationally. And hired a general manager, CEO from a world-renowned general manager who was at the former CEO. Even the Jagdeo government wanted to get rid of the former CEO. I did him. By the time I came in, he was on a month-to-month contract. So at the end of this month, I said, sorry, you can leave. They brought him back. The man that destroyed the system, they brought him back. So you know what's going to happen. Garbage in, garbage out.
All right, really. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Mark, I mean, Jagdeo, them, they just speak, but as Winston has said earlier, they are persons who will believe whatever he says. So I'm glad for the opportunity to be able to respond a quick response to some of the numerous untruths he said, and I leave a challenge to you and your viewers. Think of any project, any single project that they put their hands on that has been successful. They cannot do any project. I mean, if you talk about a fiber optic project, just name it, all of it, because their default position is to get themselves rich first, and when they fatten themselves at the trough, then they go to see how the project can work. So that's what happened. And that's what happened with every single thing. They go, feed themselves, gouge the money, take the money for themselves, and then the country's left holding the pig in the bag. The Damara Harbor Bridge, I mean, I sit here and I wonder and I laugh. That will be a major fiasco, a major fiasco. They want to have it done in 2 years. I wager every single thing that they won't even start. And I take a bet with you, Mark. Take a bet with you. They will sign the contract with a Chinese firm, right? They signed the contract with, just like they did with the airport. They sign a contract with a Chinese firm who will, and they'll give you a nice picture, just like they did the airport. They'll take a picture from Google a bridge and take a picture and show it and do it. Back. Nothing will be done by. I don't even think they'll even start driving a pile by 2025. But every day they'll have some nice pictures and information and those things. And the bridge that we get will be just as bad as the Burbage Bridge, because there's no thought into it, no design into it, no studies into it. They'll sign it for a number. They'll give you, just like the Burbage Bridge, they'll make some projections to make you think that it will work, but it can't work. But that's their default. And then there are people in the private sector and their supporters who will be championing and say, oh, look, at least they did something. But no.
And we all know why. We all know why they'll be doing that. You know,
yeah. There was a Jagdeo appreciation day. You should see who attended there and who
exactly. That is what it's about. But I like the swift reaction to the many lies peddled by Jagdeo about 2 hours ago. Even at a short notice, yourself and Winston Jordan were willing to come on to have this interview. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you did with GPL and a lot of other things as well. We are seeing some roads, some 1 inch and 2 inches roads, so-called roads being.
We're back at that. We're back.
We'll talk about that some. Yeah,
we're back at, Mark, I know I'm leaving here, but I'll say this. So we're back at patching roads. Patching roads. I mean, we moved away from that. You do a complete road. So therefore, they announce a lot of fanfare that they're giving the contractors $95 million to do something. We're back at patching roads. What we did, we said we do the entire road, so therefore you don't have to come back to do it in the 5 years. So therefore we stop patching roads in the 21st century. We're supposed to be the next Dubai.
They just don't have
patching roads, and you mean cutting out holes and patching roads. You know, like a patchwork country. I don't know. We have zero vision. Zero vision.
Exactly, the zero vision that they have. And I just want to thank you so much. I want to thank our listeners as well, all across Guyana and around the world. We just had to put this the lies of Jagdeo to rest so that nobody could go to sleep believing his lies. Enough of those days when he would lie and get away with those lies. He lied about a lot of other things. He spoke about in 2020 the return of democracy. I don't know what democracy he's talking about, but those are things and more I will deal with tomorrow evening right here on my show. And to all of our listeners, thank you all so much. I know this is a last-minute Sunday kind of discussion program, kind of worth it as well. Thank you all so much for listening and tuning in this evening. And to the Honorable Member of Parliament, David Patterson, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Mark. And do have a good evening, and I'll see you later.
All right. Thank you. And to all of you, good evening. God bless you. And be safe until tomorrow evening, 9 o'clock. Ta-ta.
She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cockcrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cockcrow, dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Cockcrow, dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day a back down, me now I come home. Inaga, jackass yard for fetchy load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Rexy and Rover. From the farm, them a come. Sun a go down but up the river. Some washing clothes, some folks are bathing at the water. Fisherman, they catch them a bring. From a canoe boat, man, them start offloading. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Lokonani. Aymara, Kwakwari, Hail Baka Kuma Kuma, even Banga Mary. Listen to this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. Them children glad when the weekend come. Out in the yard, them all gather round. Some a play catcher, some making house from straw. Two who come later, a grandma or grandpa. All a sit down just a wait. Moonlight so bright, it's just the right time to listen story or to say a little nursery rhyme. Grandpa voice a echo in the night as he tell some picnic are there with fright. Oh, Ligan, Mungeza, Massa Kurma, Burra, Nancy, even Watamuma. Oh, Ligan, Mungeza, Massa Kurma, Burra, Nancy, even Watamuma. Yeah, man, that's the true story that tell the people about life in the country.